Job Hunting
101.
Providing you with the tools you need in your job search.
Career fairs, resume writing, job banks, veteran programs.
Job Hunting
101. Hello and welcome. My name is Tanya Weathers, Career Development Trainer with the Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. And welcome to the Building Your Interview Skills, a part of the Job Hunting 101 series. Now, we understand that building your interview skills can be difficult. It's a nerve-wracking time. So today we will talk about ways to improve yourselves and ways to find out best etiquette tips about building your interview skills. Now, first, let us talk about the types of interviews. You want to be prepared always for the different types of interviews that you might come across. The first type of interview is the face-to-face interview. It's the most common. The most common type of interview between a job seeker and an employer. It's the meeting. It's the face-to-face. You want to make sure you get that #1 game face on, that 100% game face on at all times. The second type of interview that you will have is a screening interview. Now, we don't want to slack with a screening interview. We want to make sure, again, at all times, we have that game face on. My suggestion, my tip, is to take a house with a separate room, a separate area where you can post your resume, your references, your cover letter on the wall. So if you are rolling out of bed and it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you get a phone call from an employer, you'll be prepared. You'll be ready. You don't have to be scrummaging around for papers and finding all the information you need. All you will have is that one area, that one room. Now, I also suggest having a jacket ready, maybe sitting on a chair. Again, you're in those pajamas, and we know that we tend to feel the way that we dress. So you want to feel professional. You want to feel prepared. So having that jacket on a chair in that room, you just slide it on and you're ready. Stand up, smile. You can hear a smile through a phone. You can definitely hear a smile through a phone. Now, that is my suggestion when it comes to the phone screening. The third type of interview is the group interview. Now, this one can be nerve-wracking because there can be several job seekers there in the room. 10, maybe even 20 other job seekers there going after the same job, and it can be nerve-wracking. However, the best way to prepare is to research. Research as much as you can about that company. You want to know something a little bit more than the next guy standing next to you. Now, the fourth type of interview is the team or panel interview. This is when you have multiple employers. You might have 2, 3, maybe even 4 employers that are drilling you with those questions. So we want to make sure, again, that we are prepared. Research. Talk about the different products and services that the employer might have and that would bring the skill sets that you have to that different job. Now, what you also want to make sure is that you treat every single person in that room as though they're the only one there. Look them in the eye, give them a firm handshake, make sure that they are always the #1 in that room. Also, make sure that when you answer those questions, that you not only answer it to the person that asked, but to everyone in the room. Now, another type of job interview is the full day interview. Anything can happen. It can start from 8 o'clock in the morning and go until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So you want to be prepared. My suggestion, take a bag with you. Take some hygiene products, perhaps. Take a towel, water, deodorant. You never know. The employer's office might be hot, and you never know. Bring an extra shirt if you can. You never know. I also recommend to bring money. Now, just because it's a full day, don't expect that they're going to pay for lunch. Don't expect that they're going to pay for breakfast. You want to make sure you are prepared. Now, the next is a behavioral. A behavioral type of interview is one of those describe a time when. That is a behavioral question that is asking what your past experience will do to affect your future experiences. They want to know how you behaved in the past and to find out, will that happen and again in the future. The next type of interview is the mealtime. This is also similar to the full day. Bring that money. You never want to expect the employer to do it for you. So make sure you bring that money so you will have that prepared. Now with a mealtime interview, they are observing your manners. They want to observe how you will respond in an out-of-the-office environment. Be prepared. Make sure you're not chewing with food in your mouth and spitting all across the table. You want to make sure that you are remaining as professional as you can. Now, the last interview is the second interview. That's the one we're all trying to get to, always. But don't just think, oh, I got this in the bag. I know I have this. We're just going to talk about salary now. No, no, no. You might be one of two that are in the top, and that might make or break you. So still, keep your game face on because you just never know what might come up in that second interview. Now, those are the different types of interviews that you want to make sure that you will be prepared of at all times. Now we will talk about the different techniques used by interviewers. You have the question and answer interview. It's a straightforward question. The interviewer asks a question and you answer. Straightforward, simple. The next is a non-directed interview. This type is for an unprepared employer. Now, the benefit of an unprepared employer is you can shine. You've done your research, you know everything about the current information regarding that company and what might be in the news, what awards they might received, plus you know your skills. Usually an unprepared employer happens, let's say the person you're supposed to interview with just so happened to be called into a meeting. Now, they don't have time to interview you, but they say, hey, do you mind interviewing them? Tanya's coming in 5 minutes. Do you mind interviewing her for me? They don't know anything about you. They haven't looked at your resume. They glanced through it, and that's a perfect situation for you because you can take advantage of them. You can shine and let them know why you are the perfect person for the job. Now, the last interview is a behavioral, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. That's the describe a situation when. Describe a situation when you and a coworker didn't get along. That's a behavioral, and we definitely want to make sure to be prepared for those as well. I give a tip to classes that I teach. I say, search for the vision, mission, and value on every company's website, and you will be able to answer those describe a situation when type of questions. The next thing we like to talk about is what to do before an interview. We, like we have discussed before, always recommend researching. Research, research, research. Research the product, research their customers, research their competitors. Find out about the culture and if it's a best fit for you, and let them know why. Now, the next thing you always want to make sure to do is bring plenty of resumes. God forbid you get there and you have a panel and there's 5 people there and you only have 1 resume. So you want to make sure you come with extra resumes, extra references. If you have certifications, bring your certifications. Make copies of those. Written references as well are best to have when you come to an interview. You also want to make sure to don't be late. Walk through the door 10 to 15 minutes earlier. Don't be sitting out in the parking lot. Walk through the door. Remember, if you're on time, you're late. Now, the last thing is let there be time for Murphy's Law to take effect. Basically, any and everything that can go wrong usually does. So you want to, let's say you live about an hour away, leave an hour and a half, leave an hour and 45 minutes ahead of time. It's best to be sitting in the lobby for 20 minutes than to be sitting in traffic and having to call and say, I'm late, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Now we will talk about what to do before an interview. Now let's talk about the attire and dressing for success. Now we know that employer can make a snap judgment about you and the way we dress. It's a human factor. We all judge one another based on how we dress. So we want to make sure that we are dressed as professional as possible. We want to dress conservative. Better to be conservative and overdressed than to be underdressed. Let's say you went for a janitor's position and you were wearing t-shirt and jeans because it's a janitor. But if you came dressed professional, who knows, that employer might have had a janitor supervisor position available and said, you know what? You have a wonderful appearance and your skills are what we're looking for in our supervisor position. How about that? You just never know. Better to dress conservative and overdress than to underdress. Now, you always want to make sure to dress neatly, make sure you iron, make sure you tuck in those shirts, no rolled up sleeves. We want to dress neatly. Now, the other thing we want to recommend is hygiene. Make sure to take the shower, make sure you have some deodorant on, make sure you have a mitt, just in case. You're going to be doing a lot of talking, so talking sometimes dries out your mouth, and you want to have a mitt to be prepared. You just never know. We also recommend don't smoke, dip, or chew anytime during the interview process. It is very unprofessional. I even recommend for smokers not to even smoke on the way, not to even smoke in the car, because smoke lingers. We know smoke lingers, and you'd never know what the interviewer might think of you if they smell smoking. I remember I read an article before that said we tend to think as smokers as less intelligent, and we tend to think that smokers aren't as skillful and aren't as responsible, and you don't want an employer to think that from you just by a smell, and they haven't even shaken your hand and said hello. So no smoking, no chewing gum, and no dipping. All right, makeup, piercings, and perfume. Less is more. Ladies, we're not going for America's Next Top Model now. So light colors, limit the amount. We want to remain professional. As far as piercings, if you have any piercings that show, piercings in the nose, take them out, maybe even cover them up with a hole cover. Also with the perfume, less is more. We don't want to shoo them out of the room. We want it to be professional and light. Now the last thing is tattoos. Now I know times are changing. It's 2012 and tattoos are everywhere. But in the professional environment, especially for an interview, we don't know what the culture of that company is going to be. So we want to make sure we cover up all tattoos. Wear long sleeve shirts. If you have tattoos on necks, make sure you have it covered up. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about skirts. Ladies, below the knees. We don't want to give the men any kind of misinterceptions of us. So we want to make sure short skirts, no. Strappy shoes, no. We want to make sure we cover our toes, make sure that they are closed toe, and not so high of a heel, ladies. Men, no white socks with black pants. Not professional, doesn't look good. No fancy designs and fancy colors on the ties. Black, blue, gray, best for interviews. Before we complete, I want to make sure that you are aware that the Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance does have a video on appropriate attire for interviews. That website is www.workforcetampa.com.
Employers, you can search candidate resumes and research labor market information at employflorida.com.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
The Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance and WorkNet Pinellas offer workforce solutions designed to improve your business.
We have worked with WorkNet since 2005. We've been able to do so much more than we would have with the support from WorkNet.
We've been able to continue to develop our education department. Our employees have recognized this as a benefit. They've named us as one of the best places to work for the past 4 years, according to the Tampa Bay Business Journal.
To learn more about our no-cost programs and services, visit workforcetampa.com or worknetpinellas.org.
Welcome back. You are watching the Building Your Interview Skills, a part of the Job Hunting 101 series. My name is Tanya Weathers, Career Development Counselor at the Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. Today I have two employers with us to talk a little bit about what they think an interview should be. I have with me Miss Debbie Whiteco and Heather Mueller. Please, ladies, if you don't mind, to introduce yourselves.
I am Debbie Whiteco, and I am a recruiter at St. Joseph's Hospitals. We are part of the Baycare Health System, so a large employer kind of across the continuum of care.
All right. And Heather?
My name is Heather Mueller, and I'm the manager of Campus and Pipeline Development at Raymond James Financial, and we are a financial services company. We consider ourselves to be the premier alternative to Wall Street.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, ladies. Definitely. So what we will be talking about is a little bit of what I talk about in my training classes. I go through the business etiquette tips that all job seekers should follow if they want the best interview outcome. Now, the first thing, as I always say, is thank the employer at the beginning and the end. Wouldn't you agree, ladies?
Absolutely. I think it's really important for them to understand that you're excited to be there and that you really appreciate their time.
Okay, perfect. Now, the next thing I always say is to introduce yourself to the receptionist. I believe that she is the key, sometimes the big key to whether or not you get in the door. What do you think?
I totally agree.
Okay.
Being courteous, respectful, having good behavior out in the lobby and with the receptionist is a definite plus.
Definitely. Okay. Shake hands with everyone. Now, I always give the tip, it is better to shake hands with the pressure on the thumb instead of the whole hand, because we know most HR managers are women, and we don't want the men to be ruining our hands, our nice hands, and breaking them. So I always say still shake hands, but be gentle. Definitely be gentle. Now, you always want to make sure to ask for business cards as well, because you are going to send a follow-up letter after that interview. You must. A thank you follow-up letter, and you want to make sure you spell the name correctly, that you have the correct email address or phone number to send it back to. Also, just in case the interview didn't go the way that you want it to and you don't get the job, at least you will have a contact. And if at the end, maybe 6 months, a year later, there's another job that comes up that you might qualify for, you'll have the name, you'll have the number and email of the person that is directly in contact with the hiring manager. Okay? Now, the next thing I always suggest is to sit when you're asked to be sit and not before. I think it's just a basic business etiquette tip. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it follows the same as if you were going out to dinner with a client. You would wait and you would follow the same etiquette rules.
Exactly. Because we say, you don't want to just come in and plop down and act like it's your own seat in your own office. Simply say, may I? Okay? Now, the next tip I like to get is do not put your purse, your bag, or your briefcase on the desk. Because there's some employers that might just shoo it off. It's kind of similar, you just putting your feet on someone's table, walking into their house. So we always say not to do that because it's just poor etiquette. Would you agree?
I do.
Okay.
I think it also shows a sign of disrespect. You want to be comfortable. You want the interview to feel like it's flowing naturally. But if you walk in there and set your stuff down, it's like you're trying to take over. So it's important to have respect.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Now, to turn your cell phones completely off is another suggestion. I know some say maybe you shouldn't even take them at all, right? Do you think that's a better direction to go, to not even take them?
I think turning it off
Okay.
is okay, but it is very distracting in the middle of an interview.
I know even having it on vibrate
Absolutely.
can be distracting because we know it's not just a second of vibrate, it can last a minute, that
Right.
vibrating. And so I know
Right.
that can be distracting sometimes.
And I think it's embarrassing to most applicants if they get a call in the middle of an interview. And as a recruiter, if I have an applicant that takes a call in the middle of an interview, that's a major no-no.
Yeah.
But if it continues to buzz or vibrate,
Right.
you almost want to say, do you need to get that? And then that really just creates an awkward situation. So
situation.
absolutely turn it all the way off.
Okay, all right, perfect. I also suggest pause for 5 seconds to gather your thoughts because there's a lot of questions being thrown at you all the time, and you know, interviewers are just throwing question after question. Job seekers, you know, they're already nervous, and they just don't know how to answer the question sometimes. So I always recommend pause for 5 seconds, or say, can I have a moment to think about that? Pause, and then answer the question. How do you feel about that?
Especially with some of the behavioral questions
Okay.
that we ask, I would hope that people would take, you know,
The
a little bit of time to think of a good situation to share with me.
Okay.
So I value that they take that
That
time.
they take the time.
Yes.
Okay. Stick to an interesting tone. Interesting tone. A dull tone doesn't seem like you're so interested in the job.
Right.
Or maybe even that you're even skillful enough, and maybe that's why you have a dull tone and you're not able to talk about it in an exciting way. So I always say stick to an interesting tone when it comes to that. Practice. When you agree to
Right.
practice with family, practice with friends, maybe even do a mock interview. Give them a list of questions and say, hey, ask questions to me and see how I react. Let me know in places that I can improve.
Absolutely. I know that people typically hate to do mock interviews, but it really is helpful. And I would say at a minimum, at least do some research on what are some typical interview questions that an employer is going to ask. So you, at a minimum, can practice with yourself. You know, if I were to be asked this, how would I answer it? Always be kind of prepared.
Yes, I also say too to practice in front of a mirror. Because sometimes our body language and our facial expressions, you know, don't relay what we're really trying to say. We might be speaking really excited about something, but our face doesn't look excited at all. So I always say practice in a mirror. That can help as well. Limit the like, I don't know, to limit those, because I think it sounds like you don't really know what you're talking about when you're saying or like. Would you agree?
I totally agree.
Okay, good. All right. So that, because those tend to be weak words. And other types of weak words we have are I think so or I hope so. And, you know, there's a difference if I say I think I know Microsoft Word compared to I know Microsoft Word. So I always say to avoid those weak words because, again, it makes it sound like you don't know and you're not confident and you don't have the skills.
Absolutely. I think, you know, there I go saying it, that example. It's important that you project yourself in confidence and that you can really show to them the value that you're going to bring. Because again, if you don't show confidence in your ideas and your examples, why are they going to buy it?
And how can they show confidence in you if you're not showing it within yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Don't apologize for being nervous. That's another tip that I always give, because I have a lot of candidates that come up to me after I finish the class just to ask more questions, follow up, and I know they tend to get nervous to speak to me sometimes, and they'll say, oh my goodness, I'm shaking, you know, can you see? And even when I'm in the interview, I do the same thing, but I'll look at them and I'll say, I don't see you shaking. I don't see the sweat rolling down your head, but they think that they do. And we kind of all have our own ways in how to deal with nervousness, I believe. And sometimes it is not necessary to mention it because it can make it worse. It can definitely make it worse. We know that you're nervous. The employer, I believe, knows that you're nervous. But we have to remember is that they are human too. You guys are human too, and you get nervous as well. And I believe mentioning it kind of makes it a little bit worse.
I think most recruiters really realize that the people before them are probably nervous to some extent. And I think people that you know, are kind of used to interviewing others. Part of what we want to do is put people at ease so that they can feel okay to answer the questions.
Absolutely.
So it's a little bit of a two-way street there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be. It can be. So I think it's okay to be nervous. It is. Just don't, it's not necessary to mention it. Okay. And keep a positive and friendly attitude. Definitely. You always want to do that. And I think a way to do that is to make a connection. Maybe a connection with the employer. Do you recommend maybe chit chat a little bit? Maybe asking about a picture on the wall or an award that's on the wall. Do you as an employer appreciate that, to kind of die down the mood and not have it all stuffy all the time?
I think what I like to do is a little bit of that chit chat right at the beginning.
Okay.
To hopefully put the person at a little bit of ease as we start out, and to make it friendly and positive right from the beginning.
Okay.
My recommendation would be, as you get into the interview, I would limit the chit chat and really kind of stick to the questions.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think too, when you can find that connection, it also helps the employer to be able to remember you. Keep in mind that you are trying to find a way to stick out amongst the other people in a positive way. Okay. So if, you know, they have a golf poster or trophy on the wall and you play golf too, definitely mention it, because this is something that you have in common, and that's going to be a positive thing that they're going to remember about you.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, I know that sometimes candidates will say things about an award perhaps that you have on your wall. Let's say they said, "Oh, I found out that you guys won an award last year." Do you like when candidates mention about something at your company that not everybody might have known about it, or you had to do some research to find out about it?
Absolutely. To me, it shows that they have a genuine interest in the company.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times stuff like that, depending on the award, it might not be on the front page of the website. So they really had to dig a little, and they really had to think about it. Or maybe they've truly been following you while they're in school or for the past few years. So to me, it shows a real interest in your company.
Now, another tip that I teach is follow the interviewer's lead and not to interrupt. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good way to proceed. You know, as an interviewer, I have certain things that I want to find out about people, and it is much easier to kind of get the information that I need on my end without having interruptions or side conversations about something that isn't really pertaining to the question.
Exactly.
So sticking right to it is a good.
Sticking to it. And let you do the questioning, let you lead. All right, we'll remember that. Speak slow and confident. Speak slow and confident, definitely. And I'm sure that's an easy thing to understand. You know, you want to speak slow so you can be understood, and confident so you feel that, okay, they know that I can do this job. Okay. We also teach make eye contact. Because usually if you don't make eye contact, it seems as though you might not be trustworthy, or you're not confident in yourself.
You're hiding something, possibly.
You're hiding something.
Ashamed.
Exactly. Now, another thing, the firm handshake, as we said earlier. I definitely recommend the stiffness at the thumb and not the whole hand, not the whole hand. Also, do not talk negatively about a past employer.
So important.
Yes, you shook your head like, yeah, I've had that.
Yeah, I think, you know, you really want to be honest in an interview, but I think it's so important that you avoid negativity. You know, if they ask you about a previous employer or your current employer, it's important to explain the reason why you're why you're interested in looking isn't about them. It's because you're looking for other opportunities for yourself. Anytime that you start to portray them as negative, you're actually going to put a negative portrayal of yourself.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Now, we also have, because with this question, it's always big, because what if they were fired? And all they have is negativity. Or if they were fired, you know, unjustly or just, whichever, how do you suggest someone mention that they were fired? Or should they at all? Should they at all?
I think it's important to be honest if that's happened. Most employers these days do reference checks. It's liable to come out on a reference check, and if you haven't presented your side of the situation first, I think it's to your disadvantage. I like it, actually, if that's happened to someone, and in talking about the situation, it seems like they really took it to heart, that they tried to think about how that won't happen again, and
How they're on
perhaps
the
really,
improvement track.
right, grew or improved from whatever it was.
Okay.
If it is a situation where someone feels like they were unjustly terminated, I think it's okay to share that, but to be in a positive, kind of politically correct way of presenting that side. And I often think that when people share it with me, there's probably two sides to whatever the situation was. Their side, the employer's side, and often I think probably the real truth is somewhere in the middle of the two. You know, so I definitely think it's something that should be shared honestly.
And just be honest. Okay, okay. Now, in my class, I also teach about the tone of your voice. How important do you think that the tone overall, is it more about what you say or how you say it? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very important.
Okay.
And I very much like the face-to-face interview because I get a lot from nonverbal communication. So separate from the words, the tone, the face, people's body language, all that says a lot about a person. And as someone that recruits for healthcare, I'm looking for someone that is positive and caring and compassionate and respectful and honest. And all those things are things I gather many times not from just the words.
Okay, okay, and you wanted to comment to that?
Well, she summed it up very well. I would just add, you know, the words are important too, but when they're delivered, you know, when you're able to show your skills and your knowledge and deliver it in a very positive, friendly demeanor, it's really going to, you know, to help sum it up nicely. If you can deliver the information and you clearly know what you want, I mean, you know how to express your experience, but you don't sound excited about it or you sound unhappy or miserable, you have to remember this is a competition and somebody else is going to come in behind you and have the same skills and knowledge but may not have the right energy, and it's going to go towards the person that has the combination of both.
Exactly. And I get a lot of my candidates who, because of their nervousness or because, you know, they might not know how to express themselves, you know, in the right way, that also too ends up having a lower tone or a more of a monotone, or their body language isn't how it should be. Are there tips that you have, maybe that you can provide a job seeker on how to express themselves a little bit better, even though they're nervous, even though they're not sure? Any tips?
I think people should try and just be themselves.
Just be themselves.
Be themselves, and hopefully the way they usually are is what the job is calling for. You know, I don't think trying to be something that you're not is probably going to be helpful.
Sure.
Either way.
And I think this is where it comes back to practice. You had said before, you know, the more that somebody practices, the more comfortable that they're going to be.
Okay.
You know, and I certainly don't want someone wasting their time, you know, going to interviews that they're not truly interested in, but keeping in mind that, you know, the first interview somebody has is probably going to be the hardest. And then as they get into the swing of having interviews, they're going to become more and more comfortable. So whether that means real interviews or doing the whole mock thing, again, practice is key.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Can I add another tip, Tanya? I think that if people include in their research really what are the qualifications of this position that they're interviewing for, and what are they bringing to it that are strengths for that position, and presenting that. You know, and sometimes I think people choose the wrong position to apply for, and then hopefully as a recruiter we can fit them into what might be, because different personalities work better at different things.
This is true.
You know, different strengths work better at different kinds of things. So doing your research there and presenting your strengths for that position is a good thing too.
Okay. Now, usually I say start with the job description to do that research. Do you think there are other ways, other places maybe you should look?
I think, you know, today lots of companies have the website that includes like their values and what kinds of things are important to them. doing research on that and trying to think about what are your strengths that fit in with what that company wants is one way to do it.
Okay.
Networking with other people that know something about that position so you can get a little inside feel for it could be a good thing.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I want to talk about the hot questions, the most commonly asked questions that most interviewers tend to ask. Okay, so the first one is the tell me about yourself. The tell me about yourself. What do employers really want to hear? What do they really want? Do they want to know, oh, well, I have 5 kids and I have 2 cats?
No.
What do they really want to hear?
Definitely keep it professional. Keep
Okay.
in mind why you're there. You're there to get a job.
Okay.
You know, while it might be appropriate at some point that some piece of or some aspect of your family or your personal life might fit, and that's fine, I wouldn't start with that. It's important to highlight what it is about you that is a good fit for this job. Go ahead and make the connection for them in the beginning.
Okay. Okay. You want to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, again, usually a person is called for interview if they meet the minimum requirement for that position. So it is a given that the skills and education are there. And that's probably something that we all explore to make sure, but that's the given. Above that is more, what are you like as a person and what are you bringing to this position? Those kinds of values and stability, goals for the future, those kinds of things that make you unique but are going to really bring something extra to that position.
I agree.
That's what I want to know.
What is it, your goals? Why are you here? What can you bring us? Okay, all right. Now the next question is, why do you feel you would be a best candidate for the position? I tend to get kind of, you know, if good and not so good questions, or answers rather, when it comes to that, when I ask the class normally. What is it do's and don'ts when answering this question? And what can you, why do you think you're the best candidate? The do's and don'ts.
That one I think can be tricky because you want to balance it with showcasing your experience but not appearing too arrogant.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you walk that fine line. So it's important, again, you know, maybe steer away from the word I think, the phrase I think, and just explain straight out, you know, what is it that you bring to this position? How are you going to add value to the firm or to the company? You could also tie it back to the job description, and that way, again, you can tie it together for them.
Okay, okay. Now another one we have is tell me about your work and school experiences. Now should they just read straight from the resume? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I like people to talk to me
Okay.
about what they've done and what were important responsibilities in their job and why they liked it, why they left.
Okay.
If there are gaps in their employment, what were they doing through that time period?
In the gaps. Okay. Okay. Now another one we have is describe your strengths and weaknesses. Now this is a big one. Most of my classes hate this question. And I tell you what I tell them is when it comes to the strength, make sure that it's a strength that not everyone is going to say. You know, I always hear the detail-oriented, the timely, I'm dedicated, motivated. I'm sure you guys have heard those often as well. Sure. And so I say steer away from those often used strengths. Talk really about your strengths. What are you great with within your occupation, within your industry? And then with the weaknesses, my opinion is always to express something that you truly have a weaknesses within your professional life, okay?
Yes.
You don't want to go into the personal weaknesses, but into your professional life, maybe think of a time that you felt you were a little weak and ways that you can improve it. Always end with ways in a positive way to improve it, whether ways you're currently working on or have worked on to improve it. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think too, with the strength, also give an example. You know, don't just tell them what your strength is, but give them an example of how you used it at one point. You know, why it's your strength. Because then again, you know, anyone can say it's a strength, but tell us really how it is.
Really how it is. Okay. All right. Now, the next one. What do you know about us? What do you know about us? Is there research helpful? In order to do that, I'm assuming, maybe go to the website. Are there any other places that good research would come from? A good
Many of the
subject
people
matter?
that I talk to have had experiences at the hospital, either as a patient themselves or family members.
Okay.
And many times I have people that want to work there because of that experience on the other side of the bed. And that makes me feel good. They want to work there because they've had something positive from people that already work there.
Okay.
So I like that.
All right. Now the next one we have is, why do you want to work here? Now what can impress an employer with that question? Why do you want to work here? Name something that you think that somebody could say that make you say, wow, okay.
Well, I mean, again, it comes back to research. If I ask them why they want to work here, I really want something specific.
Okay.
Not just, oh, it's a great company. We often get, I'm looking for free Bucks tickets, you know.
Of course.
Come up with a legitimate reason, which we do not get free Bucks tickets, by the way. Come up with a legitimate reason why you think this company is a great fit for you. Whether it's because you looked at it on the website, maybe you do have a family member that currently works there, maybe you attended, for me, I work a lot with college students, you attended an information session, but be specific and be able to articulate back to the recruiter exactly why you think they would fit in.
Okay, okay. Now, we have another question. What do you think you can contribute to the company? Now, does that kind of go along the same lines of go for the job description, go for the research? Would you agree that that would be the kind of lines that you would go to, what you can contribute? Yes? Okay.
I think that kind of goes along too with the strengths. If they've talked about their strengths already, that hopefully those would be the contributions.
Okay, all right. Now, one question that is a hot topic right now is the logins to social media. And the new thing is that some employers are out there asking for login information so they can find out more, maybe personal information about the candidate that the candidate isn't normally revealing. How do you feel about the login, the social media login?
You know, I think this is a hot topic throughout the country for all different aspects of this situation. You know, I think as time goes by, there will be more and more policies from employers on how this is used and how members of that organization should be using it. You know, legally, I think there's questions both ways. What can be looked at, you know, privacy issues. I think people do need to be careful, and not just for employment purposes, but things that are out there that other people can access. You never know who's going to see that one day, and it might impact any part of your life. So I do think people need to be careful.
Okay,
absolutely.
I think employers are probably struggling now to come up with policies and how they're going to proceed with all this, and probably things will change over the next couple years as those get put in place. And
okay.
Right.
How do you think a candidate should answer a question if they are asked for their login?
That's very tricky. You know, I think that you could possibly ask an alternative. You know, we don't use that practice, so you know, I think asking someone to give away their password and login information is kind of personal. So maybe you could suggest to them, how about, you know, I friend you instead? That might be an alternative. That might feel a little less invasive.
Yeah, that's an option. Okay.
But, you know, just to kind of add on to what Debbie was saying, I think it's so important that whether it's right or wrong that companies are doing this, you need to be prepared for it to happen. And it's really, really important that you manage your online image. You just don't know what's searchable. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but you can put your own name in and do a search and, you know, see what comes up. Keep in mind that while you may think that, you know, Facebook, for example, is for just your friends and family, if it can be found, they can view it. So I think it's very important to keep everything as professional as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I'm sure that our viewers are really going to appreciate the answers and the opinions and the tips that you provided, so thank you. Now, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we will be discussing follow-ups. Thank you, and stay tuned.
Job seekers, you can upload your resume, view job postings, and research labor market information at employflorida.com.
I'm a single mother of 2 kids. I work a lot. I come home tired. We do miss a lot. He dropped off for a whole month. Sometimes I would talk to him and he wouldn't even turn around and look at me. I would just get frustrated because in any way that I talk to him, it just doesn't go through his head. I didn't give up because there's always hope that they'll snap out of it.
Give your teen the boost they need to graduate. Call 1-877-4A-KID or join us at boostup.org for tips and advice.
The Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance and WorkNet Pinellas offer workforce solutions designed to improve your business.
I've really valued my relationship with WorkNet Pinellas and have been instrumental in keeping us informed with new educational trends.
We've really seen our employees grow in their own personal development. It has not only exceeded Power Design's expectations, but our employees' expectations as well.
To learn more about our no-cost programs and services, visit workforcetampa.com or worknetpinellas.org.
Welcome back. You're watching the Building Your Interview Skills course for the Job Hunting 101 series. My name is Tanya Weathers, Career Development Trainer with the Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. And I am still here with Heather and Debbie, and they are employers from local employment here in Tampa Bay area. Now, there is a question that I wanted to ask. Before, in our past series, we were talking about the common questions, and there's one that I wanted to make sure I asked you. And that is, when it comes to the questions that the job seeker has to ask, what do you like to have someone ask you? What is a good question versus a bad question to ask? I know sometimes we get questions such as, how soon do you plan on making a decision? How do you feel about that?
I think it's totally appropriate for applicants to ask questions.
Okay.
And I'm open to any kind of question, and sometimes I can answer them. Sometimes if it's very job specific, I can't, and that'll be answered with the departmental interview. But I think it shows interest. Many people will jot down some questions and bring them with them, and I think that just shows they were trying to be prepared and get answers. So I totally think it's appropriate.
It's okay. Okay. What about you, Heather?
I agree. I expect them to ask questions, and you know, I think it's important too. A lot of times people do come with questions jotted down, and then maybe inadvertently the questions already get answered. They should still have some in their back pocket that they're prepared to ask, because as a candidate, if you don't ask any questions, it looks like you're not interested. It looks as though you got through the interview and you're like, it's not for me after all. So I think it's important
to ask. Now, how do you feel about that? When are you going to make a decision? Am I the candidate that you're going to pick? How do you feel about that question in particular?
I think, again, it's totally appropriate, and they should know how quickly a decision will be made.
Okay.
Many times it can be in a few days, and sometimes it's going to be a few weeks. And I think to be honest with people about that, so that they know kind of what to expect and time frame to expect, is fine.
Okay. All right, perfect. Now I want to get into the segment about follow-ups. Follow-ups is my favorite part of job searching because I think it's the most important part. I really do. Because you've had that moment to sit down with the interviewer and talk to them about your skills, about your experiences. But if you don't follow up, sometimes it also shows you're not interested. Sometimes you think, oh, well, okay, I met that person for a few moments and now they're gone and I'll never see them. And I think they might not be interested. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Now, if someone were to interview with you and you say, I'll call you back in a week, and you don't, do you want them to call you?
I think I don't know if it's a matter that I want them to, but I think it's appropriate if they do.
You do?
I don't think it's, offensive or anything like that, because recruiters are very busy, and it might be that they really are just working on filling another position. So I think that's perfectly fine.
It's perfectly fine. Now, how soon should they call you?
I would probably give it at least a week.
A week.
And everyone has differing opinions. I think an email would probably be better than a voicemail.
Okay.
A lot of times you are more likely to get a response, and maybe a faster response through email. It's quicker for somebody to reply back to you in email than it is for them to pick up the phone and potentially have a conversation. So that might get you Get what you want faster.
Okay.
I think if the person that you've interviewed with has given you some idea of what will happen, to follow whatever that idea is a good idea. So if a time frame was given, say of a week, and you don't hear in a week, I think it is appropriate for you to call back.
Call them.
If your final guidance was that if we wish to pursue, we will contact you again, then I don't think that's a good idea if that was your parting word for you to call.
Okay.
And I totally agree too about the email often is a quicker, better way to do it than a phone call.
Okay. Okay. Now, how do you feel about over follow-up? I always say don't over follow-up.
I agree.
I'm sure with you being with popular employers in the area, you get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails. So what do you feel about the over follow-up, Heather?
You know, I think that if you over follow up, personally, you really can do yourself in. You know, you can become, you may have been a strong candidate, but if you are constantly calling or emailing, then you become not such a pleasant thought in their mind. So I would definitely, I think it's important to listen to what Debbie said and think about what they last said. If they said a week, wait a week. And you know, after a certain point, I would probably just stop following up.
Stop following up. Okay. Now, I also teach to never burn bridges. And I think what you said as well, maybe with the over following up, you know, you're going to X yourself out of the process. And so that can burn a bridge that, just say something might have come up and you were into a project or you went on vacation and that week did go by and you were constantly following up and you probably meant to call them when you came back from vacation, but you've already burnt that bridge because when you came back you had 10 voice messages and now you don't even want to talk to them anymore. So I always teach to never burn those bridges because again, you never even know when another job might pop up. You know, 6 months later, there might be another job you're interested in, but they remember that you left 10 voice messages on their voicemail, and they're not even going to touch your resume again. So I always say never burn those bridges. Never burn those bridges. Now, what do you think about thank yous? Thank you following up, thank you letters, thank you emails. Is it appropriate, or are you kind of like, no, we don't need them? How do you feel about thank you letters?
I think they're appropriate. You know, I think you also expect them. A piece of advice I would give, you know, a lot of times people give them immediately after. I always think it's a good idea to, you know, keeping it within the guidelines of 24 hours, but maybe push it to 24 hours because again, let's say your interview was in the afternoon on a Tuesday, maybe wait till Wednesday to follow up because again, you're, you know, refreshing their memory of you rather than, you know, you turn around and an hour later the email is there. Not that it's a bad thing, but I always tell, you know, I would tell the candidate, take advantage of the opportunity to, you know, remind them of your name again, remind them of the interview.
Okay, okay. I always say because you want to say that you're respecting their time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. I also believe that it's another way, another chance to highlight your skills and to stand out from the crowd with that thank you letter. I also believe that it's another way to express your interest. Again, that you are still interested in the position and you didn't just meet someone for an hour and went home and just waiting for them to call you.
Right.
You know, so it does just demonstrate your interest. And as well, I think it's a great way to clarify any questions that might have come up. I always say, let's say the interviewer asked you about your certifications, your nurse certification or your CPR, and you didn't have it with you. But maybe in that email, that follow-up email, say, you know what, Debbie, I know you asked me about my CPR card. Here's a copy, just to know that I do have it. What do you think about that?
That's helpful.
It's helpful. Okay, because I think it's a really great way just to clarify what might not have been so clear in the interview. Right. All right, so here are some rules, some simple rules that I always give. And send within the 24 hours. I definitely think that's a good tip. No spelling or grammar errors. No spelling or grammar, because again, it makes it seem less professional, that you might not be as skillful as we thought you were, because you have spelling and grammar errors, so we don't want to do that. Send by email and mail. Send by email and mail. Now, you said before not so much the mail, or you actually said not so much voicemail. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a handwritten letter is fine, but the thing about it is it's not going to be as timely. So keep in mind in the conversation that you had with the recruiter, how quickly are they looking to fill it? If they're going to be making a decision this week, you know, the mail, you might miss an opportunity. Whereas an email, you're going to get the opportunity to follow up a lot faster. And I certainly wouldn't expect to hear back from the recruiter because most, you know, a lot of times they don't respond, but they might. And then again, that's giving you the opportunity to keep the rapport going that you built with them during the interview. So my recommendation again would be email.
The other advantage to email is that if they have gone on second interviews, say with the department manager, it's an easy way for the recruiter to forward it so that actually their email's being shared.
That's true. Okay, good tip. Also to personalize to each team member. Okay, if there was a panel of interviewers, to personalize it individually to each one of those people and not just to the group of interviewers. Okay, and there are thank you letters online as far as templates. I do want the watchers to know that. Again, that's www.workforcetampa.com. You can find those templates there. Now, I wanted to talk about the accepting an offer. We had a great interview, and you were interested in the candidate, okay? So we want to know, is it okay to take time to consider the offer? And I always say this, you know, take that time because we have so many things going on in our lives. We have, you know, the cost of gas, our family obligations, the living costs, and all of these things that we need to consider when it comes to whether or not we're taking a job opportunity, our happiness, the company's culture, our goals, our own professional goals is something else that I know that it involves with accepting an offer. Now, how long do you think that someone should wait? If they're going to take that time, how long?
I would like, after a person has interviewed, that they've already begun to think about those issues. So that before they ever get the offer, hopefully they've considered most of those aspects. I think if people need to consider a few extra things at the end, it's okay to say, I need a little bit more time to consider all this. I would suggest that the least amount of time that you need to do that is better. Because again, the competition for any one position can be pretty high. There probably are other highly qualified people for it. And if a position is open, usually that means they need that worker in place. So that maybe 24, 48 hours, not much more than that, I think would be good.
I would agree with the same time. You know, and it depends on the position and on the offer. Are we talking about relocation or simply a job in your backyard? Factors like that can you know, impact how long it might take you to make a decision. But again, like Debbie said, hopefully the candidate has been thinking about this throughout the process.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you, ladies, and I'm sure that the viewers are very helpful. Thankful rather that you are here giving from the employer's perspective. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Again, my name is Tanya Weathers with Tampa Bay Workforce, and you are watching Building Your Interview Skills for the Job Hunting 101 series. Thank you so much. Take care.
You don't have to. Left-handed people, a little bit more creative. I'm going to say nothing.
Left-handed people are smart.
They are.
I have it. Dad, do you want to get the phone?
No.
Every year, 1 million families face losing their homes to foreclosure. If you're ignoring your mortgage issues, things will only get worse. Call 1-888-995-HOPE because nothing is worse than doing nothing.